Assalamu alaikum. I'm Aksa Tariq, and on behalf of the CXO Media team and CXO Masters Academy, I'd like to welcome all of you to Cyber Sectober 2021. This is a comprehensive series of talks, panels, masterclasses, making it one of the most compendium of sessions on cybersecurity in Pakistan. As most of you are probably aware that October is globally known as the month of cybersecurity awareness. We thought it's important that we bring the same attention to Pakistan, given that we've seen so much work being done in the last few years, especially with regulated and non-regulated industries, really picking up on the cybersecurity conversations as well as the work that's going on. We hosted our first session, which was the inaugural day yesterday with FSIs and telecom, and today we are focusing on the industry side of things. Of course, this becomes more and more important to us because in the last couple of years, we've all seen especially I think given with COVID-19 and all the changes that it has brought to businesses, to cybersecurity threats and others, that industry is now known as the next big target. And the simple reason being that there is so much data, there is so much information that is going on around within enterprises and outside of it. But how do we protect that and also build robust infrastructure in order to allow this work from anywhere culture that has been going on in the world? With this, I would quickly like to just thank all our partners for bringing this event to your screens, which includes Trend Micro, Comtel, and Titanium by Rapid Compute. Our first session for the day will be led by Stephen from Trend Micro. He looks after the director role. And as most of you said, it's always great to see people participating from all over the world. And I'd like to mention here that Stephen is joining us here from Taiwan today. And let's hear it from him on the global perspective and the shift in the cybersecurity trend that we've seen globally. So Stephen, I leave it over to you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, my name is Stephen Su, Product Marketing Director for OT ICS Cybersecurity in Trend Micro. Okay, it's such a great honor to have this opportunity to join this big event. I'm going to provide some insight about the OT cybersecurity. Okay, so allow me to share my screen here. OT world is changing right now. Okay, it used to be isolated. Right now become interconnected. Okay, reason for that, you can see a lot of new technology has been applied and adopted in the OT world, including the Industrial 4.0, people talking about sensor, IIoT, AI, artificial intelligence related to the AIoT, 5G network, edge computing. There are also key driver. Okay, another big key driver is digital transformation. It happened everywhere, including different vertical. Also, COVID-19. COVID-19 also another key driver, made this everything change. Okay, before we talk about the cybersecurity, we should consider the criminal minds. Usually, in the cyber criminal mind, they will consider three things. The first one, of course, the attack opportunity. Okay, how easy for them be able to penetrate organization. But after the penetrate organization, they should consider what kind of benefit they can get. Okay, usually we'll try to get the data or ransom the data. The final one, they need to consider how easy for them be able to duplicate or replicate the similar attack to another organization. If these three conditions all fit, so they were targeting the specific vertical. I would say that we'll call it perfect storm. Okay, so look at the OT. If we take a look at the last decade, okay, about the OT cybersecurity, from 2010 to 2017, you can consider this OT specific attack. Usually it was conducted by state-sponsored hacker. Actually, they were more targeting on critical infrastructure. Take an example here, 2010, Starnet, very famous weaponized malware, be able to penetrate the Iran nuclear power. Another instance is 2015, also very famous in Ukraine. Okay, their power grid is under attack. Attacker using the black energy as the initial assets. Okay, so, but things has changed in 2017. Okay, start from 2017, there's one called WannaCry, very famous. They leverage the Windows vulnerability propagate themselves, spread themselves inside the environment. Surprisingly, two verticals are suffer most, manufacturing and healthcare. Because reason for that, because that's the stuff from 2017. A lot of people, a lot of industries start taking the digital transformation as the key driver, that open the door. So hacker also know it. Okay, OT is vulnerable. So that condition one is attack opportunity is high. So they need to consider the second condition. Okay, what kind of benefit we can get? And they find out OT people waiting to pay for the ransom because the cryptocurrency is not untraceable. So in this year, actually, they are leveraging the supply chain attack, also vulnerability attack, to replicate their attack methodology to another different kind of vertical as well. Okay. So you might hear about the Trend Micro always release the annual report. Okay. In last year annual report, we provide the top 10 industry under the most attack, ransomware attack. You can see the manufacturing, healthcare, food and beverage, oil and gas, all in the top 10 list. Okay, you can see the OT war is their target right now. You might hear about the IT-OT convergence. What does it mean? You can see that adult OT environment start adopt the common IT technology like virtualization, like the 5G network, like the networking. Okay, so how about the hacker? What do they think? Actually, they think they feel at home. They can use same attack technique in IT world and cause the damage in the OT world. So sometimes we call that collateral damage. If IT fail, actually OT cannot work. Okay, so right now it's interconnected. Okay. So another piece of information provided by Trend Micro last year, Trend Micro identified there's more than 127 new ransomware family in last year. And guess what? 10 of the most detected ransomware family, eight of them are all related to the OT ICS cyber attack. Okay. So how about this year? So we did not see any stop sign in the first half. Okay, the ransomware is still there, caused a lot of damage. Furthermore, those hackers actually leverage a supply chain attack. They also discover more vulnerability and weaponize as an attack tool. Let's take an example in this year, July, Kaseya, they're under R-Evil ransom group attack. So for customers who are using their service, once they get updated, they will also be ransomed. So it's more than 1,500 customers has been ransomed. Okay. Also in this year, May, those cyber criminals start targeting the critical infrastructure. For example, Colonial Pipeline is under the dark side criminal group. Okay, they demand for US $4.4 million at the same month. In the same month, President Joe Biden also issued the executive order because of that ransomware attack. We seized more than 300 million ransomware attempt in the first half. The second half is getting worse. We were going to release the annual report soon. Okay. So reason why the OT environment is so vulnerable, okay, based on our case study, also our customer, their feedback, we identify there are four major reasons. Okay, the first one is legacy system, legacy asset. They contain massive amount of legacy operating system. Most of them are out of date, also end of life. But reason for that is they are not able to conduct the update, patch process. So that's second reason, patch absent, because they're not allow their machine to be able to shut down. Okay, so that's the reason they did not do any update at all. The third reason is about network, because their network is not decided for cybersecurity, it's for the productivity. So there's no network segmentation at all. Okay, sometimes we refer it as a big flat network. Last but not the least, okay, insider threat. We see this kind of attack happen everywhere, no matter it's intentionally or unintentionally. Sometimes the worker or maintenance they bring a laptop or USB stick with virus inside and bring the network that cause the damage. Okay, very famous semiconductor company happened the ransomware attack in 2018 is because of insider threat. Okay. So in order to understand more about the inside, actually we conduct one survey last year. Okay, there are 500 responders. Okay, including US, Germany, and Japan. And based on that, 61% of responders, the claim their manufacturer has encountered the cybersecurity incident before. Based on 61%, 75% of the incident report is because the production stop, and even 43% of incident they cause the production stop for 4 days. Okay, all the 500 responders, they all claim one thing. Okay, 59% say that the current challenge is difficult for them to find the right solution to fit in their environment, protect their device or network. Okay. So Trend Micro actually will recommend the 5 best practices for OT cybersecurity resilience. The first one, you should do the network segmentation to reduce the risk. Okay, no matter you can use the network base or some kind of firewall base, or even do the VLAN switch routing to do the network segmentation. Okay, so we highly recommend you can consider to use the industrial IPS to do the network segmentation. For those legacy systems not able to do the patch, you can consider use the virtual patch. Can be the host base or network base the virtual patch to shield the vulnerable device. Okay. The third one is trust list. For those unknown attack or insider threat, you can consider use the whitelisting solution for the endpoint or even for the network to build up the access control list. And how to harden the critical asset is limit the attack surface. That's also another consideration using for all those OT asset owner should be able to think about it. And last one, you should do the security inspection regularly for the inbound, outbound device. Okay, so those 5 best practices also apply to the critical infrastructure as well. Okay, so for Trend Micro, actually we provide the total solution, including the IT, OT, and 5G network. Our methodology is do the prevention, okay, stop the threat from the IT environment, or even provide a protection in the cloud environment. We provide a detection in the OT network environment. Furthermore, we also provide a solution for the network segmentation and endpoint protection in the level 1 to level 3 in the Purdue model. Okay, so here is our solution portfolio. I'm not going to introduce each by each because I'm going to do the grouping here. Okay, we have the IT-centric solution, OT-centric solution, also CT-centric solution. The CT is communication technology. Talk about the OT-centric solution. It's all developed by TS1 Network, Trend Micro subsidiary company. They have the industrial IPS endpoint, also security inspection. So in the Purdue model, level 1 to level 3, they provide a comprehensive solution in there. For the IT solution, Trend Micro already have the different kind of portfolio for cloud, for network, even for APT prevention. And in the CT area, we also provide a private 5G network solution. Okay, to aggregate all the solution, we also provide a Vision One. That's the SDR solution to help the security operations center be able to do the quick response for any instance. Okay. So another thing from Trend Micro, we're so proud. We are the #1 vulnerability contribution in the ICS vulnerability. In last year, we contribute a lot of the high severity ICS related vulnerability. Okay. Also, for our subsidiary company, TS1 Network, they also build up the world first IoT ICS Threat Atlas. It's a honeypot solution. We will aggregate every attack related to the OT cybersecurity. That allows us to have the full sight about the current status of the OT environment. Okay. In summary, okay, there are three main points here. The first one is IT-OT convergence. It's a big driver for the OT cybersecurity. And hacker is aiming for OT already. Okay, so no matter the manufacturer or critical infrastructure were under attack. And if you are considered to ensure OT cybersecurity, we highly recommend you should take the practical approach, because not every solution fit to the different kind of vertical solution. Okay, you should have the more adaptive solution. Okay, that's one reason we not totally providing one fixed solution. Instead of that, we provide adaptive solution. If you have any inquiry, you can contact our local representative. Okay, he can provide more detailed insight. Okay, that concludes my presentation. Okay, thank you. Okay.
That actually sums up what we're looking to gather insights on today on industry and how each of them, our cybersecurity and IT leaders who are sitting here with us today, on how, as the dust settles and economic storm abates, business leaders have rightly focused on remaining resilient through operational and financial pressures. And only now do all of them have some time to step back and ask that how we can understand this better, what the new reality looks like in the next few months or coming years, and how as business leaders they can also prepare for it. With this, I would like to quickly move on to our masterclass with CIO Engro Corporation, Mr. Azhar Nawaz. This session will be led by Mr. Abdul Sabur, who is one of the co-founders of CISO Forum, our partners in Cyber Sectober, in helping us produce this virtual series. Sabur Saab, I'll leave it on to you.
Thank you, Aksa. Thank you for having me. And thank you, Mr. Nawaz, for joining us for this masterclass. So basically, as industrial systems are becoming more connected, they are becoming more prone to and more exposed to vulnerabilities that lead to cyber threats or risks, for that matter. The high cost of industrial equipment and the devastation to communities and economies that an attack would or could generate are the key factors for organizations looking to protect their industrial networks. Industrial organizations need rapid and measurable improvements to their ICS security programs to defend against the emerging cyber threats and demonstrate maturity in progress. The attacks on ICS are growing in not only in number, but also in sophistication each year, from month to month, from quarter to quarter. The potential financial impacts from these attacks are in parallel growing as well. Just let's say for a few examples, like major attacks on organizations like Colonial Pipeline, like JBS Meat Plant, and an attempt to poison Florida's city water supply, have served us as harsh reminders about the necessity to build better strategies with regards to operational technology. However, companies and organizations, critical infrastructures looking to increase their cyber defenses or improve their defenses postures are often overwhelmed with the landscape of security solutions out there. Having said that, we have with us seasoned leader like Mr. Azhar Nawaz, who serves as Group CIO at Engro Corporation. Thank you, Mr. Azhar, for joining us for this session. Where would you see organizations or critical infrastructures to the trigger point, the point to begin with on OT cybersecurity, as we can all see that this is still an emerging field, an area of improvement where organizations are seen to improve their transactions on ICS overall?
Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for leading question, Abdul Sabur Saab. First of all, I would like to say hello to to the leadership who is sitting there. I can see Khwaja, Tanveer Salim, I can see Abdul Samad, and the seasoned leaders from the IT and IS industry. So I'm happy to be part of this discussion. I actually, when I joined, Stephen was talking about a lot of good stuff, and I felt that maybe I've joined a little late. This discussion Stephen was doing is very, very relevant to what we are doing these days. IT and OT convergence, which Stephen was talking about, we cannot live without IT and OT convergence. We can't live under a rock today. We need to connect IT and OT for all sorts of reasons, for intelligence and for data-driven decision making and all that. So this convergence is important. But the problem is that in terms of IT, if you are under attack, the consequences could be loss of data, loss of service, and other things. But in terms of OT, if you become under attack, there are serious consequences, right? So you cannot take OT security lightly. So what we are doing at Angro is today, we have started a comprehensive program. Remember, the information security, both in terms of IT and OT, should actually be done with the business perspective, right? So what we have done is at Angro, we realized that we need to work on this IT OT convergence, and for that, before we do anything, we need our defense up. So what we did, we have created a forum, internal forum, where all the we are a conglomerate and a group, and we have got representation from everywhere. The first thing which we are doing on this is we are working on a governance framework. So I think this is a lesson learned. Wherever you want to do this, whoever wants to do this initiative, I would recommend the first thing is put some governance around it, especially when you talk about security. So we started from there. We have developed a governance framework, and based on that, we are looking to conduct our assessment, cybersecurity assessment of all our OT setups. We are in the middle of that. Once we complete our assessment of different manufacturing units, we'll know the gaps. We'll try and fill those gaps, and then we'll say, okay, now let's converge. Let's do whatever we want to do on top of this, and we can leverage on top of that.
Exactly. See, digital transformation is actually an important part of every organization, enterprise these days. And rightly said, I mean, all of these technologies kicking up and implementations going on around, further integrating them and embedding them to each other, like machines talking to machines and applications talking to applications. How do you see, you rightly said that IT and OT should be converged together. However, how do you see this ideally being managed? Because we have different divisions or different governance officers or departments taking care of IT, different people taking care of OT, where they are more involved with the plants and manufacturing units. How do you see this ideally being managed between both ends?
So this is a great question. If you address this challenge, I think you're halfway there. So what we did is, if you ask me today, am I OT expert? I would not claim that. I've spent a lot of time in IT and stuff, and that's my core. But there are people in the organization who understand OT better than I do. So you need a collaboration. You need a collaborative group, which is where I said that when we started, we made a council, and I'm leading that council. But we have people from OT, we have people from IT, we have people from our IS. One thing which you can't do is you can't split IT security or IS security or OT security. It has to be one. It has to be one organization. You can't have two different CISOs looking at IT and OT. You can't have two CIOs, one looking at IT, one looking at OT. you need one organization.
Right.
So your information security needs to look at both, right? So when you create the governance framework, you clearly spell roles and responsibilities of manufacturing unit, people on the ground, IS setup, IT setup, and then you create a governance council and you work around that. So that's why I said framework is very important. Your governance is very important. Once you put that in place, the three pillars of security, how you defend yourself from at the parameter and at the endpoint, and how you monitor what's happening. So these are three things which you need to look at. So I was recently visiting Jitex, and I saw how Diva is doing their SOC. So they have their SOC where they have IT, OT, and IoT, and they're monitoring all of them together and integrated all of them in one SOC, right? So this is the way forward. You cannot do security in silos.
But then again, the challenges of when we talk about OT, we're talking about enterprises. So placing sensors literally with every device, we still need to hardcode or fine tune the processes or procedures to get the right alerts, to get the right use cases being triggered. And I think that's one way forward, rightly said over there. But how do you see organizations, when we talk about enterprises, we talk about core applications, we talk about industrial systems which are distributed. Challenges like being distributed, or having multi-vendor legacy environments, having operations done 24/7, sensitive devices, risk of scanning, etc. So all of these risks actually pile up. And having all that in your basket, I mean, how do you see organizations having a better visibility to foresee foresee these attacks and move forward with addressing those risks predictably and addressing them before they happen?
So look, you cannot, I can't claim, no one can claim that we are 100% secure, and we also can't claim that we have mitigated all the risks. Sometimes you have to decide, and it's the metrics. You need to look at impact, severity, and you need to decide, okay, what are the risks I need to mitigate, what are the risks I can accept, and then what are the risks which I can transfer, right? So
exactly.
So the environment which we have, especially if I talk about my organization, is very complex. We have different business lines. We have within different business lines, we have critical and very varied service, different service lines and different value streams, even within those business lines. And the work which we are doing is very critical, and it's essential for Pakistan, like for our food vertical, our energy vertical, our LNG vertical, or anything you pick up with what Angro is doing is all essential for our environment, is all essential for Pakistan. So we need to make sure that whatever we are doing, we are protected against the risks which can disrupt our production environment, which can disrupt our services and stuff. So how you can address this? One thing which we are trying and we're looking to guard against is in terms of OT environment, there are different OEMs, and the OEMs have their own systems. And if you talk to them and say, oh, this is where I want to integrate your system with, and this is my strategy, and I want to bring data from all different devices at one place, they will probably point a lot of risks, and they will say, okay, there's this risk, that risk. This is my product which you can use, which would be, it would be very difficult to afford. So these are the challenges which we need to understand and take forward. And when the different industry leaders are sitting here, the need of the day, which I feel, is that in terms of our environment, in Pakistan, I think there is a way forward where we can all collaborate, and we should all collaborate, develop synergies, and then bring all our expertise on the table and also bring all our problems on the table, and maybe look to create a central model, create a central SOC which can probably serve all of them, all the needs of different organizations. I mean, if you ask me today, I can't make an in-house SOC. I can't keep those sort of resources. I can't keep the training up. It's very, very difficult. So I have to outsource certain services. And today I have no options here. So I have to outsource outside Pakistan. So a lot of things we have to outsource to service providers outside Pakistan. And it has its inherent risk also. Your data goes, and I have seen in I have previous experience where we have seen that some of these cloud service companies, it becomes risk when they have all of your data. So I think a collaboration between different industries and between IT leadership, sit together, maybe work out and find a solution together.
Exactly. I think, regional or sectoral committees or communities need to be designed and put forward in place to let the leaders talk about the challenges and find a way together out of it. But then your recent point has actually raised a very a new discussion here, which takes us to the next level or next phase of this discussion, which also concerns with the digital resilience. When we talk about IT, we have resilient systems. We have ERPs, we have different servers, we have different modules, applications, and plugins, which can have sort of resilience and a failover system. However, when we talk about OT and manufacturing with industrial units, with distributed units, with PLCs, how do you see this sort of resilience and like you rightly mentioned, OEM systems? These are coded, designed, specified by the vendors, which are, probably also custom tailored for your organization. How do you see resilience kicking up in this area?
So you very rightly mentioned. In terms of IT security, we can have different layers around. We can put different layers around availability. We can bring redundancy. We can bring clustering in, and there are a lot of such options. In terms of OT, there are certain resilience built into the OT systems. They are of course there, but in terms of defending against attack, I think the discussion which Stephen was doing was very, very interesting in terms of how you create zones and how you separate systems,
right,
and how you keep up with the patches and stuff and updates. This is very, very important to keep up with the updates and patches. I think this is something which I have learned in my recent role and the roles before also, that if you keep up with your patching and updates, I think you're protected against lot of attacks. It can't be 100%, but if you are protected against, if you keep up with the patches, especially the virtual patching, which Stephen was talking about, is something which has really, really helped us in protecting against a lot of attacks.
Correct. Very rightly said. And I think we're also moving towards different eras from time to time, and multiple things come up with and forward to the ICS industry and the industrial revolution 4.0, 5.0. I think we're moving towards bringing humans more closely connected to technology, and also helps us with resilience to all these processes. So I think we're left with very little time here, and the information that you have provided was very informative. And I would personally love to work with an organization like your esteemed organization soon to actually go through all this. I work mostly throughout the GCC region in the Middle East market with organizations. I have a few petrochemical organizations that I work with with perspective to cybersecurity. So all of this is providing us all with a great learning edge and a better way to move forward for the nation.
Yeah, it would be great to connect. And this is a journey which we have also recently started, because I mean, but you can't live without this convergence. You can't say, okay, I'll air gap my OT systems and I'll keep them separate in an island and then it will keep on working. That time has long gone now. So we need this convergence, and for that we need to develop defenses, because in terms of OT, the loss against cyber attacks is real. It can be
It's
even
real.
loss of life. So I think this is something which we need to focus on, and which is why before we started working on IT OT convergence, we started working on the OT cybersecurity initiatives. And once we feel that okay, we have plugged all the gaps, all the known gaps, then we can say let's connect this and let's move forward, and then bring technologies like the digital twin and other, where you can do preventive maintenance and all other things. But without integration of IT and OT and all these technologies, the future of manufacturing would become difficult.
Correct. Correct. Security by design, all of that takes that perspective, which provides an attribute for organizations like yourself to move forward in the right direction. Okay. With that, we come to the end of this session. Thank you, Mr. Azhar, for providing us all these great enlightening tips for us, for the joiners, for the viewers, for the listeners, and learning from you, from seasoned leaders like yourself.
Most welcome. Thank you for the opportunity, and I'm really privileged to be in the room with all the leaders. I can see Zakir Saab as well now on the screen. So good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Subbu Saab, and thank you very much, Azhar Saab, for taking out the time.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. We will now proceed to our Intelligence Insights panel for today. And Azhar Saab setting the tone rightly for the industry war room and how leaders like yourself are building the IS war chest design. We have a mix of panelists here, as most of you have probably already met each other and are happy to see that we've brought in a mix from various industries, because we want to understand about how large organizations are looking at cybersecurity. Given that the FSI and the telecom industries already have regulations on developing a cybersecurity department or a CISO, what are the other side of the industries looking like? We want to understand how does this pan out for you as you develop your strategies. I will quickly make an introduction to all my panelists today. We have with us Mr. Noor Samad, CIO, House of Habib and Thal. We have Mr. Zakir Rizvi. He's the head of IT security at K Electric. We have Mr. Shahid Sattar, who is the CIO at Samsung Group of Companies. We have Rabia Salim, the CTO at Habib Education. We have Mr. Hafiz Shah, head of IT at ICI. We have with us Khwaja Tanveer Salim, who's been always very supportive and very forthcoming to all our events. So I'd like to give him that special mention here. He heads the IT department at United Energy Pakistan. And we have with us Faisal Islam, CIO at Al Karam Studio, as well as Mudassir Mia, CIO at the City Schools. With this, I would like to quickly put out my first question, and we'll sort of keep this hybrid because I want to understand and learn from each one of you, and I hope that you're all going to be eagerly participating in this. From a business risk perspective, how are you in each of your roles and capacity adopting a risk-based security mindset in terms of tying business criticality to defense strategies? Because when COVID-19 hit, it was all on your heads. You had to look at business continuity, but you also had to make sure that the work from anywhere culture had to be safe. I'll start with Tanveer Saab. Let's start with you.
Assalamu alaikum ji. Bahut shukriya, Aksa. Thank you, Azhar, for setting up the tone very right, and thank you, Abdul Sabu. I think very pertinent questions and very nicely taken up by Azhar. What to the question that just Aksa referred to, I think if we go a bit back in the history, it was more like something that we call the generic transformation is happening place. There were times when we used to have viruses. And you have virus, and the antivirus was the biggest thing that we had. It's more like a khair or shar ka jo ek मामला है ना, पहले virus आता है, then antivirus आता है. So there's always a virus, antivirus, khair or shar ka. So then there were viruses, then there was malwares, then there was wormwares, and there were ransomware. And now we are entering into a more dangerous stage, which we sometimes the people can find the terminology called killware. And to some of the thing that was mentioned by I think by Stephen regarding the Florida incident, when someone was just trying to mix up something into the water which needs to be distributed to the Florida city, and it was a more of a fortunate event that it didn't take place, but yes, it could have taken place in that way. So there were times when the people used to do the hacking and the stuff, or what you call the cyber attacks, just for fun. It was more of something that how it originated from. Then it was for the money. And now it has transformed from the fund to the money to something to attack the critical infrastructure that could even have got a bigger geographical impact. Now the bigger country politics is getting into it. Between the countries, so you talk about US and China, and you got lots of things like Israel and Japan and Russia getting into it. So and now what we are just witnessing right now, and which is more scary part of it, apart from the critical infrastructure of the country, we're talking about the lives of the people. And this is something which is now becoming more and more scary. So this transformation from the time when we used to have viruses and we used to only have antivirus, so it has now gone into more deeper penetration. We have got fertilizers company, Angro has got Angro fertilizer in there, and we have got the lots of chemical companies, a lot of petrochemical companies operating in our country and across the globe. And they have got the risk of the gas discharge and the ammonia release and so on and so forth. And those could be to become life-threatening, not just to one particular person, but to a mass of the people actually working around. So in terms of risk mitigation, this is some sort of a cost of what I call the cost of digitization that we have to pay for. Azhar very rightly mentioned, we cannot keep the two worlds isolated. So IT and OT eventually, even if we don't want, eventually we have to get them integrated because we need data analytics, we need to know how the things are performing. We are planning for things like manless management of the power plants and things like that. So for that, you need to converge them. So with the technology advancement taking place, 5G knocking on the door, we have got all those critical components already ready. So when the things are ready, so we just, even if we don't want to adopt it, we'll be forced to adopt it. Like the way, my father was 82 years old. He is now very much glued into WhatsApp. And he normally, whenever he sees my sister living in Canada, she say, and one day he comes to me, says, I can't see the last scene since last 2 days. So where is she? And and then we have to explain, it could happen. She might be traveling. So this is the cost of digitalization that we have to pay for, and we have to be ready. And as again we said that the basics remain the same. It's again the war between Khair and Shar. They might be a step ahead of you. So as Steve mentioned in one of the slides, that we have to think like the mind of a hacker, where he can go next, and that's how you can try to mitigate the risk to some extent. Because you can't be the hacker at that point in time, but now with the digitization taking place, with the things getting more and more global, and things getting more and more social, and things getting more and more geographical, the span has gotten it's a very wide span umbrella that we're talking about. So thinking like a hacker could help. Plus, you asked the same question from us that I think Sabu Sab asked that. How can you plan for the next step? They can only be we can plan for the next step. I can't say we can't, but I think there are lots of basics that we need to be very in control of, which we normally call the minimum mandatory standards. For example, that there are cases where patchings are not done properly. There are cases where the firewall password are still the ABC 123, and there are the cases where the people are not trained because the weakest link remains that particular person. He picks up a USB and go and put it in the laptop, and laptop is connected to the say the turbine, and turbine is exposed to the internet, and then can go as scary as you can think of. So those are my thoughts. Yes, it will happen. We have to be ready, and yes, we have to make use of all the tools to actually combat that threat that we already have in place in each of our lives.
Absolutely. And Noor Saab, I'd like you to add on to this, because you look after a large organization yourself, and you've been heading the IT department there. How have you, especially given the last 2 years and all that it's brought, adopting a risk-based security mindset while you expand towards digitization?
Thank you, Aksa. Thank you, everybody who are here, all the leaders. Assalamu alaikum. First of all, I would like to say that, of course, every organization is basically passing through the evolution phase. We are learning day by day. As rightly said by Fajat Anveer and Azhar Saab, that there are many incidents that are happening on day-to-day basis. Our organizations basically are focusing on mainly on their core areas, core functions that are sales, production, finance, HR, but they have to focus on the information technology side plus the operational technology side. These two areas are currently working in isolation. So what is happening that the organization feels that this is the responsibility of IT department to manage the entire infrastructure and the devices that are related to operational technologies. But operational technology doesn't go hand in hand with the IT department. They don't want to share the information. That's the two departments working separately. So the top management, basically what is missing out here is that the information security has to be rolled down from the top level to the bottom level. That is, the board has to be involved in the decision making of the information security, which is right now missing at this point, because normally all these things are basically left on the shoulders of the IT head. The IT head is responsible for the operations. IT head is responsible for the information security as well, if they don't have a dedicated CISO. So what happens, there is a certain level of risk that is gathering on day-by-day basis. So organization need to first get themselves assessed for that particular risk as well. So we within the House of Api, we try to come up with the annual risk management process. We try to assess the risks that are arising within the information technology. But what we would like that businesses should also take into account for what is happening within their own domain as well. So risk assessment has to be done in their area as well and in our area. If you must have rightly heard that disaster recovery planning is always planned by IT in order to ensure that the infrastructure is available to the business 365 days a year. So, but what about business? So business have to also think into that dimension and understand the risk that may arise if they may not be implementing certain level of security features and functions. If they are not training their own people, the training has to be embedded from top to bottom as well. Because if the CEO is not aware of the latest information security trends and the issues that are going on upwards around the global in the global scenario, then of course the lower level of the management will not be able to understand. They will not be able to take seriously. If I take an example of HSE, health, safety and environment, earlier it was not taken very much seriously, but now because the top management is taking that particular area very seriously, so everything is trickling from top to bottom. So I would also say that organizations should proactively take in steps to basically handle the information security aspects. So there are different types of risk strategies or methodologies that are available within our own environment. There are some organizations that are not taking care of the information security aspect. So security is not considered. Some are following the maturity based model, like they want to have the best of the best information security equipments, best of the best information security training systems available for the organization, but they're not using it. But there are some organizations that are following risk based. What they are doing, they are assessing, they are trying to identify the risk and then mitigating those risks gradually and giving priority to the highest level. And some are taking proactively rather than react.
That's actually good to hear, and I'd like to put in a point here that we saw that when GDPR came in, there were a lot of regulations suddenly put in world over about security regulations and about a structure that the world needs to follow. And the reason why, as I mentioned earlier, where we're having this conversation with mixed industries is because each one of your organizations belongs to a different industry at large, with differing or with varying regulations. Zakir Saab, I'll take the conversation towards you and would like to hear from you on, because Noor Saab was talking about energy, we were talking about utilities. That's literally the backbone of any economy also. We'd like to hear from you on how you're developing that security risk or security first approach by design within your organization.
Thank you. Thank you, Assalamu alaikum all. It's a pleasure being with you and listening to good thoughts. I think it's encouraging to see people are so involved in addressing how they perceive security. Getting back to the point which Aksha asked, how utilities are taking security upfront. I can say for K Electric that the first thing one needs to understand is that operational technology and information technology, these have two different cultures. Information technology is more about resilience, you can say. Is more about and operational technology is more about focusing on availability. So you can say when you go in the operational technology side, when you have to evaluate risk, the first thing is what you need to understand is that you need to understand the process first. What sort of a security this process really needs. And for that, you need to understand that digitization is a cover that they had probably 15 years back or 20 years back, probably. They started with pneumatic systems, then they have an air control system, and now they have digitized systems. So you will need to understand whatever unit you're running in the operational technology spectrum, whether it is a manufacturing unit, whether it is a unit that is generating electricity, it was never meant to be operated in a digitized space, because the physics and the mechanics and the chemical processes have nothing to do with technology. Now, over time, these things have been digitized. Now, for instance, if K Electric is running a gas turbine, it is being controlled by a controller that is running on a Windows machine or a Unix machine for that matter. Now, there are specified, very targeted attacks on that particular thing. So how are you going to understand, make sure that plant head actually understand what risk he is carrying with this particular digitized space? Now, he has to know two things, and the organization has to know three things. Plant manager has to know his operational resilience and how his digitized space is really performing. And the organization has to be in the context that anything that is not related to plant or is related to plant should not be hampering operations, because it is hurting it directly. Now, this culture, how are you going to evaluate this culture? Now, the first thing is you need to have a cybersecurity framework with you. Now, you can follow the continuous monitoring framework, or you can follow the cybersecurity NIST framework. You have to go through the 5 stages. You need to identify what you need to protect, how you need to recover, how you need to respond, and how you need to mitigate whatever you have with yourself. Now, with that particular approach, whether you talk about IT side or the OT side, gone are the days when traditional security can do the job. I don't think probably the last 10 years, I think West is heavily investing in intelligence-based security. Now, this has an altogether different spectrum. Now, one needs to come out of this thing that OT and IT have to be dealt separately. Yes, they have different characteristics of people who are managing it out. They have different considerations. For instance, just for the sake of explanation, if you talk about an information technology infrastructure, it is purely an offline structure. For instance, if you have to post an invoice, you can do it today, you can do it tomorrow. It's not going to make a big difference. But when you talk about operational technology, it's about the जिस तरह से आपका टाइम पास हो रहा है, वो चीज दोबारा आप replay नहीं कर सकते. You cannot replay that. So you have to consider security in that particular angle. Now this requires a lot of maturity that I'm afraid at this point in time, organizations all around the globe have this challenge that the C-board executives are unable to really harness this particular balance in between. And I think much work has to be done over there. K Electric, in terms of a regulated entity, yes, NEPRA has recently what they have done. They have identified some guidelines for cybersecurity. These are pretty you can say a starter for anyone who is as mature as the August panel that we have right now in this particular session. But at least they have started it out. SCCB, for that matter, has introduced some guidelines to actually for organizations to maintain a cybersecurity department. They should have some executive reporting of that thing. Data for the first time has now been considered as an asset to be kept. Before that, we all know that there's a company's ordinance that you need to have 10 years of data or transactional logs with you. But data as a valued investment, a valued asset, is something that is being talked about now. So I think moving forward, IT security and OT security, I think these have to be an inclusive part of the business strategy. You cannot prosper because if you're not with technology, you are losing out on opportunities. If you're losing out on opportunities, you cannot have that leap forward. If you cannot have that leap forward, you cannot have that competitive edge in the market anymore. So you have to go there. Now, if you have to go there, how are you going to sustain this advantage? How are you going to be ahead of the competition that is out there? And you have to compete with emerging markets. You don't have to compete anywhere close in the local market. You have to compete internationally now. So even in the regional competition, you need to have this thing very rightly pinned with your objectives. And whatever business strategy we have, whether it is IT inclusive or whether it is OT inclusive, it needs to get into the radar of the C-suite. And C-suite, I always say, yes, they are unaware, but I think it's a responsibility and foremost duty of us as leaders in this particular area to actually educate them on this thing. Do some continuous sessions on awareness, do some sessions to make them realize the importance of security, and not in the terms of firewalls and malwares. It should be in terms of what business opportunity they can lose if something like this can happen to them, and what is the consequence they have to face. So just to give you a small answer, the regulated entity, and as far as the regulator is concerned, yes, they are concerned about the security of data and how sustainable the operations are in terms of billing, invoicing, and the generation side. And yes, if you take recently, probably last week, the chairman of NEPRA was being briefed by a team of OT security experts somewhere from Siemens, who actually talked about SCADA security for the first time. Now this is happening for the first time. So the change is really on the cloud, and things are really moving ahead.
Thank you, Zakir Sahab. That brings me to our question for Shahid Sahab and Hafiz Sahab, because both of you are also looking at industry, and as Zakir Sahab rightly said, it has to be a marriage between the best of IT and OT, and it cannot, you cannot develop these defense strategies across all surface attacks. Hafiz Sahab and Shahid Sahab, whoever would like to go first on how you're developing this within your organization and the kind of response, because Zakir Sahab raised a very valid point that the C-suite needs to be on board. Varna, you, me, and all of us sitting here together can make all the strategies, but it's going to be ineffective if it's not, taken up by the board or the management at large.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
I would like to give the opportunity to Hafiz Sahab, and then I'll just put a shed on that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Shahid. Thank you, everyone on this panel. Yeah, it's really great to be here with all you technology leaders of Pakistan. And thank you very much, Aksa. I will take the discussion forward like Zakir was explaining, because I believe that with the rapid developments in the cyberspace domain, I believe Pakistan has emerged as one of the fastest growing digital economies in the world. Pakistan, if you look at the internet penetration and the tele density, are increasing exponentially, which is resulting in greater global connectivity. But again, this connectivity has become a tool and target of conflict and crime or crisis as well, which varies basically from with respect to nature and its occurrence and the power. Now, what we have discussed is mostly about the awareness of the management, right? I believe that many organizations, their management, they are bit aware of that something like this might happening, but they are not very much clear about that. I mean, what sort of challenges can be there if there is a breach. But I believe the most important factor is to train your whole staff, because I believe whenever there is a theft or fraud or any attack in your network, so one of the most common ways, basically, those cyber attackers, they get access to data through employees. So I believe there is a need to provide the training and a proper guidance to your employees on a frequent basis, because we need to tell them that what is happening in the market, what sort of attacks were there, and what was the loss and how to prevent that loss, for example. Because very generally there can be fraudulent emails impersonating someone within your organization, and it will ask like some personal details to access certain files, for example. So I think one of the most efficient ways to protect against those attacks is that you need to train your employees to take care of before even clicking on any link in the email even. Yeah, I mean, because why I'm saying this, because as a technology at the technology part, what we can do is basically we can do patch management, we can put end point protection, install firewalls, backup our data. But at the end, I believe the employees, they play a pivotal role. I mean,
it's always the humans and the people sitting right next to you, sitting to your left and right, who are always going to cause the most, I think, amount of vulnerabilities.
Exactly. So at IC Pakistan, what we did basically, we have started our journey. I mean, because we're considering all those digitalization things and IoT thing that's happening around. So what we did basically, we also took a risk-based basically approach, in which what we did basically, because we don't want this to be like a checklist thing, mentality in the organization, right? We want it to be a systematic approach that basically identifies and evaluates and prioritizes the threats, basically. Because once you have that risk identification and you have already set the criticality of it, then you also get a chance to take your management on board that such risks are there and how you can prevent from those risks. And even sometimes you get a buy-in sort of thing from your management as well, that at which risks are acceptable or not, right? So for example, the very first thing we did was business impact analysis. That was to identify and document critical business processes, and because that reveals how those keystone operations and functions would impact business continuity if they were hindered or eliminated. So once you have that analysis, you do a risk assessment actually. So the risk output value gives you and opportunity to understand and help prioritize the different risks, like I said. And this output is one of the greatest advantages of this approach, I believe, because it produces personalized metrics based on your organization. So it's not like you are just following a standard in the industry. So these risks are specific to your organization, right? And then you obviously, once you have the identify the risk, you can implement the needed control. And like I said, what we started with the ISO 27001 and 2. But obviously, I can see that even in the industry in Pakistan, people are doing COBIT as well.
Yeah.
So once you have implemented the control, the very important thing is to validate And the most important thing is basically making it part of your routine. I mean, the continuous monitoring and governance is very most important
The
thing.
organization DNA, I think that's where where we're looking to understand. I'd like Shahid Saab to take the stage here now on how they've of course been working on this in the last couple of months at least, if not longer.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me here. I was just listening each and every senior respected professionals, and then I just picked and choose specifically categorically from Tanveer Saabs, Noor Samad Saabs, and Zakir Saabs. The problem here in Pakistan, which is I can say that it's a dilemma. The Pakistan, apart from like 5, 6 big telcos and some enterprise organizations, all the senior executives, like we call it like a C levels and board of directors, they are very much, to be very frank and excuse my words, they are very much slow in terms of putting the pressure, in terms of convey the message, in terms of giving a specific we call it like a scenario and a real picture to senior management or boards, that now this is the time to put each and every department, or we call it a domain, together, and start with a kind of a techno functional concepts. I have heard that Tanveer Sir was having a very dangerous examples. Again, Zakir Saab mentioned that the problem lies with OT, IT, and many other things. We call it like technology is definitely evolving, but technology is not evolving around Pakistan. It is evolving around globe. We need to just see what is happening across the globe. We should not reinvent the wheel. We reinvent the wheel, and then we can bring the technology, the specific, not only the technology, but the specific concepts, the process, the method, how globally it has been adopted, and put it into or developed into the systems like production or maybe manufacturing. Again, the problem is not only that senior management. I blame, but I can come down in terms of middle, and then supervisory and the low level as well. I'm just covering Hafiz Saab's comment that there is a lot of requirement or maybe a gap which needs to be filled by the awareness of people, organizations, associates, and a kind of a consortium between departments, not only the department, but between other divisions. And not only the division, it needs to not limited to the divisions, but some relevant or maybe like-minded organizations, like energy sector with energy sector, like education sector with education sectors, and like manufacturing and production as well. Again, we need to see the main reason of IT security not opted or implemented in Pakistan, since all the globally, we call it like Europe, USA, and other countries, we are following them, but we are very, very, very far behind. And this is the only reason. But I have studied in terms of my scenario, because I have been into hospitality, and then I'm purely a hardcore manufacturing area. We never encourage that cross exposures in departments, which needs to be developed and dealt specifically from IT to OT and OT to IT. So it will kill, or it will solve a lot of matters. Just giving you example that if IT guy is very much capable to handle that OT as a support, he needs to go stay many like not more than a month, not more than like 5 or 6 weeks, but at least he needs to go and see what is happening around. And the C level, the board of director, needs to play the role to give them opportunity to put into a kind of a structure where every individual needs to see who they are actively relevating or connecting or interacting with each other, so that can be a problem solving in terms of IoT and OT. And coming back into the standards, which Noor Samad Saab said, yeah, I agree, and I humbly disagree. Somehow we need to put some standards, but the standards are far behind. As one of my colleague mentioned, that Pakistan or government of Pakistan put it some regulations. I was also part of some cybersecurity draft, but unfortunately it took like 11 or more than 11 years to implement it, or maybe just to release onto the industry. We need to play our roles. I put a blame with my, starting by myself and respected colleagues, that we need to start mingling up with each and everyone, and then we need to put some kind of a consortium or platforms where we need to say the problem lies with me, problem lies with every other industry. We need to highlight these things, and as a group or as a consortium, we need to put into in front of the global or maybe the authorities of bodies in Pakistan, if we talk about the nationwide thing. So this is major thing we need to put it into the place, and then we can run the show, or maybe we can see the other secondary or then secondary things. The problem, I think we should start from our home. We as Zakir Saab said, and Tanveer Saab, okay, we need to go for a proactive approach, but how and where we need to start, I think it's my organization, and I'm expecting the same from the every respected members, that maybe they have these things in their mind, and if we put together and if we bring all things on a
especially because you also talked about education. We have two people here, who are heading their respective organizations and looking after the entire say infrastructure of developing that robust setup, especially given that education sector has seen a complete reform in the last 2 years. Things that I think they were both advocating for within their organizations for a long time finally sort of came to life with of course plethora of challenges. So we'd like to hand it over to Rabia and then Mudassir Saab also.
It is not very much different, but unfortunately education sector is always taken as a very different industry, where usually data or infrastructures are not taken that seriously as it has been taken in the corporate organizations or the government organizations. However, a few years back when I joined the Habib group, and when we started the assessment of what is happening in the school, how it is happening, etc. There was assessment strategy, and even before COVID, we were working how to upgrade the infrastructure to the level where we can have, I guess, education sector has always focused in what is happening inside the classroom. The other side of the story has been always been very transparent or or vague. So there were so many discussions happening from from 3 o'clock, how they are working, what are their level of access to the data identification, as Zakir Saab also mentioned, identification and the critical many users, what are the categories, what kind of data that we are having in the organization. And then we did the network segmentation, the segregation of the network, their data accessibility, which at the initial level has somehow given us to the the security level to the data itself. Then for the OT, in last 1.5 years, we had introduced a lot of technology in the schools. Even now, when we are 100% physical, we are using a lot of mobile technology in the classrooms, like tablets, like laptops, other technology available in the offices side as well. To provide the security, as Noor Saab was also saying, that it is always expected from the IT department that we are the sole responsible people for the security of the equipment and also of the data as well. Whether while it is not the reality. So what we did is we started working with the department, the operational departments, which includes the faculty, the education side, the academic side, and we did the need analysis, that what is happening, process identification, what kind of education is floating, what kind of data is floating, where is the risk could be there. So the entire process was identified, and then we did the risk assessment plan. Fortunately, at our school, we have a management level committee where we as IT people, we do the awareness session, not only with the users in the organization, but also the C-suite level that we are having in the schools. So we do somehow not only explain what is happening, if we are bringing in the need analysis and the impact that any breach or risk can bring in, putting the cost reserves, that is what we call as contingency reserves, to to mitigate the risk whenever it will happen, and also to take the stakeholders on board. once we identify every aspect of what is happening, how things are happening, then we got the whole, go ahead or the freedom to bring in the, OT in any particular sector that we are having in the organizations. So the plus point that we have in our organization is that our decision making, that are the board of trustees and the people sitting at the top giving us the budgets and the go-aheads and the strategy, vision, etc., they are completely aware in two scenarios: the impact, the risk any breach can, bring in, and the cost that, the impact that can be created. So this, and the last part that we are doing is the audits. We do have regular audits of different network segments that we are having in the organization to have our lesson learns, to see what really needs to be done. And this exercise is usually done before our budgets, when we need to prepare the budgets to see if we really need to bring in new things in the organization. And the last part is the governance structure. Governance is the key, is the central hub for us as an IT department, where we are accessing the SOPs related to every process related to IT and OT, primarily the OT, because in education, we believe that OT is the primary operations, and we are working as the facilitators or the backend supports to provide them whatever services they have to keep the operations or the functions going on. So to have the proper SOPs, the governance structure, and then building the security layer at the top, keeping in mind every aspect of it. So this is how the education sector in our schools, we are dealing with ITs and OTs and security level to it. And the last part that I would add to it is capacity building. Everybody is talking about training of our staff. What we are doing from last 2 years is we are having a rigorous training program for every domain of our organizations, whether it is our faculty, whether it is the administrative staff, and even the staff that is facilitating or giving the IT services to the organization. So this training program has really helped us in actually controlling the risk factor at the very initial level, and then our security programs and the structures that we have developed has really helped us in minimizing the risk that could happen. And then, yes, we cannot 100% get rid of the risk things in the organization. So lesson learns are there every year, and assessments tells us that what advancement we really need to make.
Thank you very much. I think and that summarizes a lot of the points that were made earlier as well about remaining ever vigilant to spot potential threats, because that's something that's going to keep coming in. But that's the sub, over to you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Aksa. So I'll try to summarize and mix a lot of things that people have said. And obviously, in this industry, I am here for more than a year, but I have been closely watching and working in manufacturing for more than 20 years. So I think everything starts from awareness, and in creating awareness, the first and foremost thing in IT/OT convergence is that you do not approach it as a different ball game altogether, but you try to align it into your ISMS framework in a way that you start talking the language of the people who are working in operations. So if a lot of people are here from manufacturing background, if you go to any manufacturing across the globe, there is one thing, a mantra that is dictated and rotated to everyone, and it's labeled everyone. It says safety is everyone's responsibility. So the mantra is security is everyone's responsibility, and how it is relevant, that is very important. And the importance comes in from the point of view of what kind of risk that is involved in terms of loss of time, loss of production, loss of information, loss of maybe precious lives. So we need to attach the risks with what we are doing today. So we need to try to inculcate that safety mindset along with security mindset, and only then people will be able to realize and cross match, because the people involved in implementing, like Hafiz said rightfully, and Khaisa also mentioned, the people who are going to implement it are not the people who are at the C-suite level. They are the sponsors, they are the drivers. The implementers are the real people who are working on the shop floor. And the shop floor people vary in terms of their qualifications, vary in terms of their backgrounds, vary in terms of their what they understand of it. And obviously, a person can see with their own eyes that if there is a roller going on and if I push somebody into it, there will be a loss of life. But they are not able to understand and perceive that what will happen if there is this PLC which is working, a level 2 system which is working, if it is exposed to internet, what can happen while I am standing over here. So this is, I think, one thing that I wanted to mention. Other than that, the approach that we are taking over here is a very similar approach that has been taken for a long time, and that is related to ERM, enterprise risk management. So I believe that the cybersecurity and IT/OT convergence security has to be part of ERM, and risk register should register the risks that are involved basically at different levels in the organization and how they are pertinent to it. And I can give you an example in most of the manufacturing sector and even on the service sector where there is a legacy of many years. So the infrastructure is built upon in many phases incrementally. So there will be machines which are digital and there will be machines which are analog. What to do with them? Should we spend XYZ amount of money and upgrade all the analogs into digital and then bring it in an umbrella of security? Is it worth it? So yes, the worth will come out if we start looking at it from a risk-based security mindset. Like Hoistan Visab said, this is something which is very, very important and need to be focused on. That we need to actually aware the people. And it is actually, nowadays we hear this 5th gen warfare. So working in schools network, it is how it is important to me. My management will say, oh, there are children coming into school, how are we a risk to it? So what if somebody shoots a malicious or a terror email from one of our computer labs in the school? School's been closed for 1.5 years. There is only a security guard somewhere sitting over there. Maybe somebody comes in, he just shares a cigarette with them or a drink with him and tell him, okay, yeah, I just need to send an email somewhere. Just give me the access to the computer lab. So what is the risk involved in that? What if, should we wait for FIA coming and knocking on my door and telling me that there has been a risk transmitted from your computer lab? Or should I do something proactively about it? So this is all about connecting our risks with fear and potential of threats that can happen. So that's what it is that we need to understand and we need to propagate. And the incremental approach will be coming in the next. So the bigger organizations, it's just like a big ship. If you want to turn a big ship, you need that much of time, that much of scale, that much of energy. So you need to build it incrementally, but you have to work towards a bigger picture. The last thing that I would like to highlight over here is the challenge that is being faced today. And I think it is with everyone in the globe that the choice of technology and tool to invest in. You know, everyday threat is changing. Everyday nature of threat is changing. Everyday scale of threat is changing. So if I invest XYZ amount in technology today, will it scale up to that tomorrow? Yeah. How should we go about that? Should I build it in-house? Should I outsource it? Should I have a collaborative approach? Should I have a completely cloud-based approach? What kind of approach I need to take? And that is, I think, one of the biggest challenges people are facing anywhere and everywhere to basically finalize what approach to take and then what tools to choose out of it, so that actually the incremental journey towards a bigger picture that they commit themselves to becomes a reality. So over here at City Schools, we are working towards a bigger picture. That is, we are trying to create an ecosystem, regardless if tomorrow there is another wave coming in, God forbid, or if there is another lockdown or whatever. So our challenge number one is that how to ensure that we adopt for a hybrid mode of education, regardless if it is on-prem or online, remains consistent in terms of imparting education and for students taking education. And that's what we are working towards. And obviously, security becomes a big proponent of it. People are very keen to get data from the schools, the parents' data. We have all sorts of information available, and we are talking about, like, if we are talking about 60,000+ current students and maybe 500, 600,000 alumni, the data is lying with us. So if we are not securing the data, so this data can be used very, very dangerous in the very, very dangerous ways. So that kind of awareness needs to be built in, and that's what we've been doing, and we're trying to build towards that bigger picture.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'd now like to shift the focus towards the textile industry, and we have Faisal Saab, who's been patiently listening into everything that all of you have shared. You know, in the last 2 years, हमने भी देखा that there's been a clear distinction between essential and non-essential businesses. There were factories that had to operate and actually multiply or quadruple their production. At the same time, of course, this brought in a lot of challenges when it comes from the IT or the infrastructure side. Faisal Saab, would love to hear from you on how you've survived the tide.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Aksa, for inviting me to this team forum. I'm fortunate to be the last in the conversation, so I do not need to speak much, as everyone has been already discussing all the points that I need to discuss here. The one thing that I personally feel in the information security area is that what we are practicing at Al-Karam also. Information security is information security. It's not IT security. These are two separate things. And that's what we try to incorporate in our core values through HR, that everyone should understand their responsibilities, should value their own ethics, and should understand that information security is not just a domain, it's an organization-wide thing that needs to be addressed and controlled. And how we achieve that, it is because of the HR. We collaborated with HR, and HR helped us to achieve each and every aspect of the organization, each and every area of the organization, and helped us in organizing the awareness sessions. This is how we were able to become that, incorporate this in our values. What we did is, we are digital, we are paperless, and we are online. We have been working on the hybrid model way before COVID, because we are a design house. We have some limitations. We people like we have most of the staff is millennials, so they are more familiar working with the flexi hour system rather than coming 9 to 5. So we already were working on Office 365. So they were familiar with the Teams. WhatsApp model was phased out, so data security is already there. So when COVID hit, I would like to mention one thing here. We are one of those organizations which started work from home the very next day, because we were already working on the hybrid model. And how we achieved that? Again, with the help of management, because they have to invest in it, and with the help of HR. They aware and train, organize the trainings for us. So this is something I personally feel that without HR and without management, as everyone else said, we won't be able to achieve what we have achieved today.
Absolutely, and I think this drives us back to the point that Zakir Saab, Noor Saab, as well as Tanveer Saab had also made, that it has to be championed by various leaders, or Jaise Mudassir Saab ne kaha and Shahid Saab ne kaha, it has to come from you and then penetrated into the organization at a larger level, for each one of them to champion within their own departments. I mean, you can't do the job of the HR manager, and you can't do the job of even the CISO, for example, when you're in another role. But I think that's the mix or the confluence.
Exactly, because we have stores across the Pakistan, so it won't be easy for IT people to engage those working on the floor, shop floors, and aligning the times with the salesperson to get trained on that. This is how we will able to achieve it.
Absolutely. If there are any comments here, we also are joined by Mr. Shaukat Ali Khan, the Global CIO of AKUH, who will be doing a masterclass with us. But if there are any comments from each of you before we move on to our masterclass, we'll take them now. Sorry, you're on mute. Huh?
So I was thinking, I was just trying to make one quick comment. I think most of the organizations, what they really are missing right now is the enterprise architecture. And till the time organizations do not have a full-blown enterprise architecture in service that really looks about security as a business objective, these things would continue to be spread on all corners. Now, when I mean enterprise architecture, I would just like to pinpoint one typical thing for that. Most of us have know or are pretty familiar with the fact that user is the owner of data and IT is the custodian of data. Now, when you say IT is the custodian of data, this needs to be defined. This data which they are custodian of, is security a responsibility of IT? Is continuous safekeeping a responsibility of IT? Is user role in authorizations and the way it is being kept and retained is a responsibility of IT? Now, most of the organizations actually assume it is already known and it is a responsibility of IT. IT never actually table it out with the management to really clarify what their real role is. Now, this whole confusion about the custodianship thing actually spreads across OT and the IT setups. And in the connected world where we have palm tops, where we have cloud spaces, where we have on-prem solutions, where we have co-locations, this custodianship role needs to be defined. Until the time we really define this custodianship role for its responsibility and expectations, security would be something that we'll be talking about, but probably won't be able to reach a consensus on how to do it properly. So this was a quick comment that I was hoping to share with all of you. And if you have any further comments on this particular thing, please do drop in.
Thank you, Tanveer sir. We'll move towards you, and then if there are any questions, people can write them in.
Yes, I think just a quick answer to one of the questions that was there online. It says that is there any particular reason that in IT share is always ahead of khair? I think it's not just in IT, it's everywhere. I think share is always ahead of khair. चोर होते हैं तो पुलिस आती है, मतलब इंसान बाद में बना था, पहले जिन मौजूद था ना, तो शैतान was there, so then इंसान came in. So I think it's not in IT, it's everywhere. हाँ, हमारा focus, we always focus on the share part. So that we have to bring in the khair. So that is quite okay. So that was the question. So I just answered. I think one comment on what Akshay just mentioned regarding we need to engage, and also the Faisal mentioned regarding engaging the other departments in the function. I think that is something which is very necessary. But again, you know, in IT, the IT leadership should be the one who has to break the glass first, and they are the people who have to actually engage in the HR. They have to engage in the board. They have people who have to get the resources in. Don't expect them that they will come in themselves, because they may not be as aware as IT could be. And I recall the days when Y2K happened, year 2000, or Y2K if some of you can recall, those countries which are more digitized had the biggest pain there to suffer. Japan was the one जिसके ATMs maximum बंद हुए थे. हमारे ATMs में कोई ऐसा टेंशन नहीं थी, तो कुछ हुआ नहीं था Y2K में पाकिस्तान. But yes, in Japan it was a terrible day. Those things happened. Last comment was on the Stephen presentation. He mentioned the hardening of the critical assets. I think my question is, do we have the list of critical assets of the OT? And if we go a bit back, do we have the list of the assets which are in there in OT? Frankly speaking, IT struggle to get the asset of laptop and desktops. हमसे वो नहीं संभल रहे होते, मतलब we are struggling के कितने warehouse में पड़े हुए हैं, कितने stores में पड़े हैं, कितने distributor के पास हैं, and so on and so forth. So we are already in that circle of doing the asset management of the IT laptops, desktops, and mobile phones if IT is managing the mobiles. Otherwise, but yes, from the OT perspective, we need to have the clear inventory of the OT के assets हैं कहाँ कहाँ, किस field पे, किस plant पे, then उसमें से कौन से critical हैं, and then we have to harden that. So thank you, Stephen, again for that particular pertinent point. We need to harden the critical asset, but before that, we have to get the list of assets in place. Thank you very much.
Thank you, all of you. I'd just like to request all of you to stay back as we now bring on stage Mr. Shaukat Ali Khan, who is responsible for all ICT systems and services across AKU's global portfolio. He's recently returned to Pakistan and is championing, the cause of cybersecurity as well as IT infrastructure. I'll tell you that he has a great portfolio. He's joined AKU from the University of Central Asia, and he's implemented large-scale government, local as well as national and international projects. Shaukat Saab, if we can quickly have you introduce yourself and tell us about the work that you're currently doing at Agapan under your new role.
Thank you very much, and Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon, everyone. And this is my first public talk in Pakistan, so I'm really excited and thank you for inviting me. Yes, I recently relocated to Pakistan from 1st of June, and I'm looking after the ICT part of AKU. And AKU is operating in 6 countries: Pakistan, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Afghanistan, and United Kingdom. And we have almost over 17,000 staff and faculty, in addition to students who are actually across the world. And then mostly we are doing the healthcare. So we have 7 hospitals, 350 healthcare centers. So that means we are actually our operations are around in 350 locations, in addition to our academic programs where we offer degree programs and undergraduate, bachelor's, master's, and PhD degrees. And in addition, we have examination board, as you are familiar with. And then we have Institutes of Educational Development, and then many other programs running. So, of course, when we talk about AKU, that we are very, very particular about the quality of our healthcare systems, quality of our education. We have been in the top 100. Our medical college has been in the top 100 last year. So we follow in the technology, we follow the same things like our branding. And the technology, we are always looking for best practices. We are also always engaged with the global partners to learn from them, to leverage the experiences from them, and then bring back into the regions. For example, in Pakistan, we are operating. So what best we can bring back to Pakistan from all over the world? What is working outside, which we can bring back? So one of the vision of our chancellor was that we cannot take all the population of Pakistan to the first world country and then get the experiences there, but we can bring the best practices from the first world, from the developed world to Pakistan, and then give the opportunity to people to experience those. And that is what we follow in the technology also. So we, from our management, we have a lot of investments within the technology. We have an evergreen program running in technology. We have a lot of focus in our cybersecurity part of it. And then, of course, the capacity building is coming together with whatever we do.
Thank you. And what would, in recent months, you also shared with us offline that the president of Pakistan called you for a meeting at the Sadr, and you've been engaged with some high government officials, and not just Pakistan. I know this, it's also been internationally. Tell us about, your confidence level in regarding the government's approach, and also the fact that, we were earlier discussing that there's Pakistan's first national cybersecurity policy has just come out this year. A lot of us do think it's a few years too late, but it's still a good step in the way that the things are progressing locally. What are your thoughts on it, and how do you see this taking forward?
Yeah, I think the most important part is that there is a clear vision that technology and IT is important. There is an understanding. For example, when I was talking with the president of Pakistan, I was amazed the knowledge he has with regards to technology, the details. Because when I was talking, I was feeling like talking with an architect, because he is well aware of all the technology trends and what's happening around the world, and he's very, very focused and very, very interested in bringing Pakistan to the next level. And I can also, following a Ministry of IT and then what's happening here, I think there are some basics before we talk about a lot of emerging technologies, right? We need to work on some basics first. For example, what is the basics for technology? Good connectivity, access to connectivity, right? So I can see that there is a lot of development in internet facilities within Pakistan. They are spread out. And then, for example, I originally belong from Gilgit-Baltistan province, where we were struggling
a lot for many, many years about the connectivity. Now I can see the rapid change there. We have fiber access there, right? And then I can see in many other places also. So I think the direction is right. And I'm particularly amazed with the government initiative about actually offering their policy to all of us, all the technology leaders to review and then give their feedback. And we did actually, many of us did review to give them our feedback, and then we can see that they have incorporated a lot of those things. So I think the direction is right, but I think with regards to cybersecurity, there is a lot needs to be done from the government level, for example. Based on my experience outside, I think we need to the government need to establish some sort of cybersecurity mechanism, especially to support the victims. Because like war victims, there are cyber victims also. That can be companies, that can be individuals, that can be organizations, right? So there should be a mechanism of assisting those victims. There should be a mechanism of analyzing the impact on those victims and institutions. There should be a mechanism of foresight, the capacity building in the cybersecurity. Because can you see, we all are more and more dependent on technology now. And for example, the people who were not able to use technology before, now they have to use, because there's no other alternate way. So that means that the vulnerability is also increasing. So I think my suggestion would be to have this mechanism to assist the victims, to analyze the impact of those cyber attacks, and then to advance, for example, to bring specialization, to bring tools and technologies in addition to capacity building. And I really hope that, I haven't through the government cybersecurity part, but I really hope that they have already considered these parts. If not, then I would strongly suggest to consider these, because it's equally important that we have the mechanism to support this whole area.
Absolutely. And I think that brings me to an important part that, even you're saying that you're bringing your global as well as regional experience to Pakistan. How are you championing the cause within the Agapan University network to spread awareness? Because a lot of the comments, I don't know how much of it you were able to catch, but a lot of the comments that came in from our panelists earlier on were about championing the cause within their organizations, because that remains a challenge. Taking it up with the C-suite remains a challenge, taking it up with the board or the management, or getting everyone to understand the need of it for not just business, but also for not just business continuity and recovery, but also building robust and resilient businesses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have been hearing a couple of very, very important comments from a couple of my colleagues who are sitting here and friends. I think one of the important part at AKU, we are lucky enough that our board understands the importance of cybersecurity and what this can bring. Our top management understands the importance of this. So we do a three-pronged approach within the cybersecurity across AKU. So what are those? Number one, we put right infrastructure, we put the right tools. When I just mentioned about evergreen program, so we replace all the equipment on an ongoing basis. It's not it's based on end of life, end of support in technology terms. So whenever that comes, we replace all those things. So that is one part of the mechanism. The second part is, of course, the awareness part of it. In the awareness, then we are using couple of ideas. For example, what we do is that we send, of course, regular tips and communication, but in addition, we engage international partners. Recently, I invited the CEO of the Cyber Peace Institute, Geneva, to tell us about his thoughts, to tell us about what's happening around the world in healthcare, what are the key challenges, how to deal with those challenges. Because this is an ever-growing area, so we always need to learn ourselves within the organization, and then share that knowledge within the community and within the colleagues or within the country also. So that is another part we do. And then the third one is we leverage the experiences from outside. For example, our security operations centers, we outsource. It's in Europe. So because we know that the amount and then the impact of cyber is extremely high. So in addition to our own capacity development, we are also leveraging the expertise from outside to make sure that we have a second line support, which we call it a security operations center. In addition to our own infrastructure, we have experts sitting there who are also able to help. And then within AKU, it's a regular working going on. The priority on cybersecurity is actually built in every project we do. We start with cyber security assessment first in starting any other project. So it's part of it from the planning phase. And then within AKU, we have a system of monitoring with all our infrastructures, assets, and then what's happening. We have our own system of, based on all the feedbacks and learnings, we continuously develop our policies, and then we implement those policies. We have asset management, and then there are many other things. One of the experience I had from my previous institution when I was the CIO of University of Central Asia, one of my experienced friend here, they mentioned about the awareness within the employees and staff. What we were doing there is that in addition to giving them, of course, awareness programs, lectures, and everything, we were doing simulation phishing in time to time, which was giving us the overall actually understanding about what is the knowledge level in the organization. And then we started, in addition to that, we started actually putting mandatory courses are all the ones who were compromising in these phishing attacks because they needed more information. So that's how we reduced the impact and increased the awareness. So I think it's extremely important that the organizations, the companies, the government, everyone needs to understand the importance of cybersecurity, put the right amounts, because funding is extremely important when you want to achieve something, right? In addition to the capacity, because in Pakistan, I think we really need to build up our capacity in cybersecurity. We need to be tie up with the global trends, what's happening outside. If you can just see in the last 10 years, the amount of cyber attacks we have experienced, right? Those are 90% of the history of cyber attacks. 90% are in last 10 years because the rapid change in the whole dependency in the cyber part. So I think there are a lot of things, and we follow the trends at AKU. We learn from our partner institutions. We learn from global trends. We learn from our own experiences, the feedbacks, and then we, of course, always try to find the right balance of good solutions with our good capacity and then competent people inside.
So that really, I think, summarizes what some of the participants had also earlier on said, that, it has to become part of the DNA of an organization. So as you said that, each one of your departments and each one of those segments within an organization are looking at cybersecurity really at the core of your organization. Have you ever experienced cyber attacks within the Agapan University network, and what would you do in terms of handling it?
Yeah, exactly. Just to give you a overall general terms of the magnitude of attacks we are facing. For example, if I can give you the data, approximate data of last 12 months, right? Our infrastructure protected almost over 82,000 viruses and malwares. We have blocked almost over 27 million spam emails. And then our SOC center, the Security Operations Center, they blocked almost over 1,000 breaches. So this is the magnitude we are talking about. And I think we are doing some basic things, as I mentioned earlier, that the basics are realizing the importance of this and then putting the right priority. So we do this three-prong approach. We always, and on a continuous basis, upgrading, replacing the infrastructure, replacing the equipment, making sure that all the patches are there in a best possible way, not all the patches. Just to give you a heads up also, Microsoft, every month they release 60 new pages, yeah? So one page to be uploaded in an environment, you need 2-3 days minimum to make sure that the whole organization up. So you cannot always follow everything what is out there. But the most important patches, we of course we update ourselves. We make sure that our equipment are always within the support model. That's one part of it. The second one is, as I mentioned, that the capacity building of colleagues, the trainings and the competency building. And this is a formal, informal trainings and all those type of things. And then leveraging the expertise from the organizations who are specialized in this area. So with these three basic things, then we are coping with the part. And with regards to the attacks, when the attacks are happening, I think the important part as a CIO or as a CISO, my colleagues are here. I think the important part is that one thing, we cannot stop all the breaches, right? We cannot stop. I cannot say that I will stop everything. What I can say that how prepared I am to, if something happens, then how prepared I am. So what that means is that, are we ready to isolate? For example, we are global operations, right? Every country that we are connected. So are we ready to isolate our system so that the impact will be minimized? Yeah, that is one part. We need to test. We need to have a scripts ready. We need to have communication ready for that part. Do we have the right alerts, logs, where we can track if something happens? Recently, we experienced that there were almost over a million email fail logins actually in one of our countries, right? So if we will not be able to track those things, then that's a problem. And then the last one is, of course, simulate all those issues about what can be, what are the possibilities, what can be done, and then how we can simulate those parts. And how we do this is we continuously run penetration tests. We engage experts in that just to make sure that we can have a good visibility on our vulnerabilities, and then so that we are ready. So my advice to all colleagues, I'm sure you are way more experienced than I do, but my simple advice is back to basics. Yeah, basics are just prepare ourselves about, we are not going to stop everything, but we are going to prepare ourselves to tackle if something happens. So I think that's where it is done.
I think minimizing the damage is all we have under our control, perhaps, or at least so we think. What would your advice be to young professionals who want to pursue their careers in cybersecurity? You've had your own journey over the last 20 years, and you're bringing that to Pakistan. So that makes us feel better about, all of us were talking about talent and, people coming, the talent going out of our country, but it's actually heartwarming to see that someone like you has decided to come back and give that or share that back to the country.
Yeah, I think the important part for all the young talents who want to pursue their careers in cybersecurity, remember that there is so much potential. There is so much demand in this area, and it's not enough that you know about cybersecurity, you have read about cybersecurity. That's not enough. If you want to be an extraordinary cybersecurity expert, you have to go beyond that. What is beyond that, right? Study about what's happening around in the cybersecurity areas. What are the new tools coming, right? One thing is to follow the studies from the university, which are great. It's important. It gives you the base. But I think if you really want to be on the edge of everything, then you have to go out and then look for international magazines and international conferences. You don't need to go and join and then spend a lot of money. A lot of things are available on the internet, right? For example, Google Scholar, just type on, one is Google, right? One is Google Scholar. Just type cybersecurity there, and then you will see there are so many top-class, top-notch articles available there about the new inventions, right? The universities, Stanford, Howard, many of these universities, they have regular research on the cybersecurity. What is coming? What are the current issues? So I think, and then prepare ourselves based on those demands. One thing is for sure that cybersecurity as a profession, it's very demanding at the moment. It will remain demanded for next 5-10 years and then the foreseeable future. So I think we just need to prepare ourselves, and we just need to be extraordinary in what we are doing. We should not be focused ourselves just what is available and what we know. I think there is so much we need to understand, so much which we don't know, and then we just need to go out and then try to absorb and understand those things.
Absolutely. And I think that all of us have seen that shift, happening globally. Zakir Saab was also actively putting this on the chat about the numbers that look like for the cybersecurity industry. And it's mind-blowing to see that, risk-based prioritizations is what we need to understand, the kind of risk it brings to organizations, small or large, I'd like to see if there are any comments from any of the other panelists that they'd like to ask Shaukat Saab.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I think we have discussed a lot about the cyber crimes and the security thing. One thing that was on my mind, we didn't discuss about the budget or the cost of it, because the thing is, when it comes to any project in IT in general, you will see that when you guys might be doing budgeting, so the budget as a whole for the whole business. So when they want to reduce anything, so IT will be the first one. They will say, okay, remove this. We don't want to, upgrade. We can have the same equipment and hardware for another year. And when it comes to the information security, it also comes with the hardware level things and the software level things, hardware, software with the subscription and licensing and all that stuff. And even in information security cases, you need to have a proper team within your organization. You need to establish a department, right? So it all need money. So I would like to hear from my friends that what is their feedback on this.
I think this is a very valid point, Hafiz Shah. I think the important point here is that as a chief information officer or chief information security officer, we need to partner with our top management. Yeah, we need to enable them. We need to make them understand what are we talking about and what is the difference. And especially my experience has been data. Right, because when you go with for a discussion with right data about what's happening outside, what will be the impact if we will not do that, that is I think comparatively more convincing than just putting statements in front of them. So that's what I practice in my current role, in my previous role, that I do my homework before going there with data. So that just to make them realize, and then the comparison analysis. I think what they need to understand is that if we will not put the right budgets, right, based on what is required, then one damage, what will be the cost of one damage? I will just give you one example. I came to Central Asia from Denmark. I was working in Denmark, and there we have a big shipping company called Maersk. Yeah, they got a virus attack in 10 minutes. 10 minutes, it impacted 7% GDP of Denmark. That's how the company was. Yeah, in 10 minutes, they lost their systems were down for 6 weeks. Sorry, and then it took them a lot of time and a lot of money to come back to business. And Maersk is the biggest shipping company in the world. Yeah, this is the impact we are talking about. And you can just check the MasterCard, what happened with them recently, right? You have so many stories to just make their leadership realize, because sometimes until it will not hit us, we don't realize that, like Corona, right? Until we don't get Corona, we don't realize how dangerous it is. So this is similarly, this virus, cyber virus, is same as Corona, that until you will not feel. I will give you another example. There was a big conference in Calgary University. 10,000 people were there in the morning, and then their systems were hacked for ransom. Yeah. So what you can do, I think this is very, very important as a technology leaders for us to make them realize upfront, and that's our role. Our role is not to defend afterwards, but proactively make them realize and then get the right funding actually. And then that would be my suggestion. And in these forums, I think I really, this is really, really great. These forums help us in building and sharing ideas about our problems, and then how jointly we can address some of the issues.
Absolutely agreed. And I found that even Rabia was nodding her head when Hafiz up. So I think this remains a constant concern for a lot of people, across the board. And it's not going to be an easy feat. That I think all of you who were brave enough to step into the field of IT or cybersecurity already knew when you were taking up the job. But I think we've done fairly well so far. And I hope that forums like these, or CISO Forum, who's also a partner in bringing together this professional network, will continue to serve that need for the industry that remains. Even with Cyber Sectober, the reason why we designed this conference and spread it across a few days is because we want to talk to academia. We want to talk at the policy level and understand where they're heading. We want to talk to regulated industries like the FSI and telecom, and bring in, security insights from across Pakistan's enterprise, startups. We're talking to startups on Friday about, they're sitting on huge amounts of data when they're developing these fintech companies and e-commerce companies, but how are they building robust products? If there are any further comments or questions, we'd like to take them now.
Thank you, Shaukat, for a very nice presentation. Just had one quick question. Does AQH in Pakistan, the network that is managing in Pakistan, does service any sort of compliance to any sort of security act, any sort of health act, any sort of privacy act for its institution that is servicing health services?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, Zakir, that we operate in 6 countries, and one of them is, of course, UK, United Kingdom, right? And then there is a GDPR is already there, and we have to be compliant against those ones. Here also, we have a chief data protection officer within AKU. We have policies for all of our data compliance and our technology compliance, and then we regularly follow those ones. And then as part of a health system, we get audits. For example, recently we got re-accredited from the JCIA, which is one of the biggest international accreditation for the hospitals. So there also there was a technology audit was part of it, and then they were looking at our policies and compliance part of it. So we are in a continuous journey of this one, and then we are hopefully soon be also applying for the ISO 27001. We are almost there. So that is another one we will be getting the certification. At least we will be trying to do that. So I think in addition to many other things, then that's how we maintain ourselves. And then we have East Africa. We follow the government regulations on the data, on the technology point of view, and then adjust ourselves. In Pakistan also, I'm closely looking at the cyber security IT policy, which has recently been published by Pakistan, and we adjust our policies accordingly.
That brings us to the end of our session. I think there are no more questions. Zakir Sahab, is your hand still raised from the last question? All right. Thank you. Thank you to each one of our panelists and our speakers for today. It was a wonderful and packed with insight session, exactly what we were looking for, but we hope to continue the discussion forward, especially as each of you, develop these, work through or navigate through the challenges that you've identified. I think it's a great way for all of you to also connect with like-minded individuals and professionals who are working in various industries. And we've all understood that, especially during COVID-19, with and its induced digital landscape that it's brought, that the reason that why ransomware has become a weapon of choice is because the digital landscape is changing. In the same way, our carbon footprint has increased. Our digital footprint is increasing day by day. And for most people, when we've created that digital mode, it automatically creates a lot more targets for extortion. We've got global numbers about how industry is the next big target. We've all seen that healthcare, financial services, education, utilities, energy, these are big industries that are being hit globally as well as locally. And we hope that, conversations like these allow each one of you to sort of get the best practices from a global as well as local experience and make the most use of it. With this, I would like to once again just thank our partners for bringing this event together, and thank you to all our panelists and speakers for today. We hope to continue the engagement, and with this, Allah Hafiz. Thank you very much.